All right, we're going to get going here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's been really encouraging and even somewhat overwhelming, all the support that the Camp Arcadia family has given to me and the rest of the staff and the board, and it's really been wonderful. And I think I always know how strong the Arcadia family is, but when there's a crisis like this, it really is amazing to see everyone come together. Um, uh, a few housekeeping notes here before we go any further. Just remember, if you can mute yourself, I'm able to kind of see who's not muted and not keep you muted. But if you can't keep yourself muted, that'd be great. If you've got, if you can anyone hear me okay? I'm getting a few notes here. Yeah?
Hear you good.
All right. I actually have water in both my ears because I jumped in Lake Michigan like at 7:30 with the kids. So
I wonder if like it was just last time we just listened to it.
all right. So if you can mute yourself. All right. Awesome. All right. All right. So first, want to thank all of our staff and our board, and we had some volunteers as well on a task force for all their work to get us to the point where we're at today. It's been a lot of work and a lot of research and a lot of praying and a lot of talking to a lot of different people, and a lot of that continues actually as we continue to refine our options here. But been so thankful and appreciative of all of our staff's work, and with all the uncertainty, they've all done an amazing job to get us where we're at today. The outline for tonight's town hall, I'm going to have Stan Scheinman, our LCA board president, give some remarks. I'll give an overview of the family retreat light model, and then we're going to go by certain areas, and I'll have staff address questions that have already come in and some other ones that we thought of that would be helpful. And we're going to go through these different areas such as health and safety, program, meals, lodging and registration process, cottager and off-site use, and fall retreats, facilities and grounds, and then what does this mean for camp's larger financial picture, and then we'll wrap things up. So once again, if you've got questions, put them on chat, and we'll take it from here. So I'm going to introduce Stan Scheinman, LC Board President. There's a lot of screens here. So Stan, are you here?
I am here. I'm in the top row, upper left. Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Right.
Oh, gosh. Thank you, Chip, for setting this up this evening. Let me just first say that back at the end of 2019 and at the beginning of 2020, Chip and I had conversation, and we were talking about what an exciting year this was going to be. And in fact, as we look back at the last 3 to 4 years, it's actually been quite exciting with the beach situation and the rising water, the moving of the Minnehaha, all kinds of things, and now this COVID situation. But as we look back at these 3 to 4 years, yes, tough troubles, challenges all along the way, but there, as we look back, we're going to see an awful lot of God moments that have happened to us. Truly, I'll say miracles, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but some great and wonderful things have happened to camp. And I just need to remember next time Chip and I ask God to make an exciting year, maybe we'll clarify our prayer just a little bit more. Fun, exciting year, and not such a challenging one. But anyway, speaking on behalf of the board, I am so proud of how our staff has responded to this crisis. Their strength, their resiliency, their resourcefulness, the time, the energy that they have put into this situation, and planning and analyzing and thinking and reading and studying and all those kinds of things. I'd like to ask you right now to join me in thanking them. Just give a give a thumbs up on your screen, and that will signify a big high five to the camp staff, because we are truly blessed to have them on our team. The board also has been hard at work. We last had our in-person meeting in March in Valpo. That was the last time we met in person. We've been meeting regularly with online.
Dan, you muted yourself on accident.
Sorry about that. It was back in March when the national stay-at-home order started, when we were having our meeting in Valpo. And that was really the beginning of all of our discussions on this COVID crisis. But in all of our meetings, in our discussions, in our actions, and our decisions, first and foremost, we make sure that all of our decisions both support and fall within the guidelines of the LCA's mission. It was difficult to make the decision to change the camp season, but we determined that this was the best way for camp to move forward this season under these circumstances. And lastly, and most importantly, I thank you, our faithful camp friends, who continue to support camp with your gifts, your prayers, your love, and all the things that make camp such a wonderful and blessed place. We just thank you from the bottom of my hearts for all that you do for camp. This is indeed a full team effort. Together with all of you, camp will survive. We will thrive. We will get through this pandemic. And as we say at the end of our week at camp, until we meet again. So thank you for being with us this evening. Chip, back to you.
Thank you, Stan. All right, just a brief overview of the retreat model, Family Retreat Light. And so just to remind you, we did cancel all of our retreats that were scheduled from June 27th through Labor Day. And what that means is that they were canceled in the sense of that we changed the first 9 family weeks into the Family Retreat Light model. Luther Hostel Retreat, which is that last week of the summer before Labor Day, that was canceled. There won't be any programming during that period of time. We made that decision based on the vulnerable population of that retreat, using this model as far as putting people in only private bathroom accommodations. Would probably only be maybe 20, maybe 30 people at camp. And then our concern are many of our staff that time of the year are also older adults. So some of the thoughts there. And then we are looking to do this Family Retreat Light model for Labor Day weekend as well. So these new retreats are 6-day retreats, which is how our last 2 family weeks are, Family Week 8 and 9. But generally throughout the summer, there are 7 days. So there's Saturday to Saturday. These are going to be Saturday afternoon till Friday morning. And that'll give us an extra day to let the spaces rest as far as people not being in there. And then so we at this point, we're on plan on cleaning general areas on Friday, and then cleaning the cottages and the guest spaces on Saturday. And so it gives us more time between guests there, which is some of the recommendations from the CDC, as well as like, for instance, Airbnb is having at least 24 hours between people who are doing short-term rentals. So the retreat model really is taking the restrictions that we saw coming from the pandemic and trying to figure out what we can do within those. And so the big part of what of this model is reducing the number of people at camp, and then housing people only in spaces that they have their own bathroom. So that means being in a camp cottage. or being in an in-room, have its own private bathroom. We have 6 of those, and then putting people in private, in people who could have a traditional in-room, but would be assigned a public or hallway bathroom that would be then for their private use. And so we get 12 in-rooms through that model. The number of people at camp, you're looking anywhere from, depending on the number of children, it could be 60, it could be close to 100, depending on the different configurations in there. We are also going to be offering or not doing any large indoor activities like inside the assembly or inside the roundup or trading post. That's one of the things that the science is saying is being inside with people for an extended period of time is how the virus is spreading. So we won't be doing that. We'll be doing more things outside, and we'll get to more of those details on the program in a second. And then reducing programming. So there still will be some family week program or family programming and some programming for teens, but there'll be less programming going on. So it is going to be a different summer. I know we're all hoping we could just kind of make it just the way it used to be, but there definitely are some restrictions, and it is going to be a different summer at Camp Arcadia because of these restrictions. We're going to go into the kind of the different areas here. I'm going to turn it over to Jess to talk about the health and safety.
Thanks, Chip. A priority that has been for us and remains throughout this entire planning process has been that, we want to have a safe experience for you and a safe experience for our staff. And with the health and safety guidelines, they're continuing to change, and so ours might change as we get more instruction from the state of Michigan, as well as from our local health department. Also, if you're a part of a vulnerable population as defined by the CDC, we've asked all of our guests who are considering coming to the new Family Retreat Light to really consider your personal risk before registering for that program. Again, your safety is our priority. We're asking anyone who is registered for our Family Retreat Light that if they are ill or have COVID-19 symptoms, have tested positive for COVID-19, or have been exposed to someone who has tested positive for COVID-19 in the 14 days leading up to their session, that they do not attend Camp Arcadia. Again, that's a thing that we are using to keep everyone safe who is gathering with us. Also, another kind of guideline that we have is that if you become COVID symptomatic while at Camp Arcadia, we are going to ask that you leave, and you'll then have the opportunity to either donate your deposit or receive a full or partial refund for the rest of your stay. Also, all of our staff are undergoing daily health screenings, and they'll not be able to work if they have any of the symptoms that are noted in the health questionnaire that is provided by our local health department. Camp is following some working safely protocols that are established by our local health department and that are adjusted to meet our specific kind of needs here at camp. That's kind of the general overview. We did get some questions about these health and safeties, and so I'm going to kind of walk through these questions and our answers to them. One of the questions was, who will have to wear a mask and when? So staff will be wearing a mask when they are inside and when they are outside and social distancing is not possible. And guests are going to be asked to do the same thing. Another question that we had was, what about social distancing? And so following our local health department guidelines and the recommendations from the CDC, we are asking all of our guests who register for the Family Retreat Light that they social distance at camp from anyone who is not in their household. And those social distance guidelines include maintaining the 6 feet between you and another person, and then when indoors, wearing a mask. Our staff will be enforcing this social distancing in the dining room and at structured program events. So we're really looking at, how do we plan programming around some of these social distance guidelines and offer some new and creative options. Another question that we've received about this is, if my family's is okay not social distancing with other family or friends who are at camp with us, will we be able to mix and mingle and interact with them? And so again, we'll be enforcing those social distance rules in the dining room and at structured program events. And then it's kind of up to the family. So you are in charge of what you and your family do in regards to social distancing with your extended family and friends at camp. One thing that we do say is we insist that you are respectful of others at camp who maybe choose to socially distance from you and of others. And we also ask that you will socially distance yourself from our staff. Another question that we have was what kind of safety and health supplies will camp be providing? We'll have some masks available, but we are asking our guests that they bring their own masks to camp. And we will have hand sanitizing stations located around camp for your use. Think of places where you might be moving through spaces, be touching things. We have some hand sanitizing stations that will be set up in those strategic locations. Another question we have received is, will you have to do a health screening before coming to camp? And so we are asking that all staff, guests, cottagers, contractors, and anyone that is coming to camp, anyone who's kind of coming on site to the best of our ability, will be asked to fill out a health screening questionnaire that is provided by our health department. This kind of answers those questions about, if you're sick with COVID-19 symptoms or you've been exposed to somebody who has been diagnosed with COVID, that helps us understand that maybe you shouldn't be coming to camp. Just so you know, we'll ask that you do that health screening within like the 24 hours before you arrive. And then that health screening is daily for all of our staff and contractors who are working on site. One more question that we had received in regards to kind of the health components was, will you have to sign a waiver? And so yes, you will have to sign a waiver. We'll send it to you in advance for you to fill out and send it back to us. We're going to ask that anyone who is on site this summer, so that's all guests and cottagers, will need to fill one out before you arrive.
Thank you, Jess. Any questions, additional questions on health and safety? If there are, put them in the chat there, and we will answer them. All right, if you do, feel free to put those in there. We're going to move on to the next area, but if we get questions to previous areas, we'll just go back and answer them. We'll keep it with Jess here with some program stuff.
For sure, thanks, Chip. And one of the things about kind of making this decision was moving forward was that we are confident that even with the constraints from our local health department and from the CDC, that we can really create an experience that will renew our guests in spirit, mind, and body. And that was a huge component for us kind of making the step to move forward with our Family Retreat Light program. And while some of the traditions that we've come to love and have come to treasure as a part of the camp experience, they may be suspended this year, but we are also excited about some of the new opportunities that we'll be able to incorporate into our program, even if it's just for this year. Also, with a smaller group on site, there is the opportunity for more flexibility and the ability to potentially tailor opportunities and experiences week by week to the guest interests. One question we've been asked is, what is available to do outside? And so to be fully transparent, all of our outdoor recreational spaces will be available. And that includes, our grassy knoll, our basketball court is there, the gaga ball pit is there, the shuffleboard court will be set up, the tennis courts will be set up. What we are still kind of working through the CDC guidelines and waiting for some more information about is, whether we're going to be providing that recreational equipment or whether we're going to be asking our guests to bring their own recreational equipment with them. Another question is, can guests organize activities? And this is something that, again, we are working through. And so we will be establishing kind of some guidelines and some best practices or that if you as a guest were to decide to organize activities with people outside your household, of ways to keep everybody who's participating in that safe. I saw a question come in about the craft shop. And so due to that being the indoor nature, the facility of the craft shop will not be open this season to crafting. However, we are doing kind of like craft kits to go. So certain times throughout the week or throughout the day, you'll be able to stop by and choose from some selected craft options. And you'll have a bin that'll have all the supplies you need to accomplish that craft. There'll be a staff there who will be able to guide you through that process if needed. And you'll be able to kind of take that craft, do it as you wish, and then return those items to the craft shop that we'll be able to then disinfect and then get back into the rotation for the rest of our guests to be able to use. Another question we had was, can we explain a little bit more about who will have staff supervise programming? So one of the decisions that we made is that we will not be offering staff supervised activities for children that are going into 7th grade and below. Instead, for those age groups, there'll be family activities. So think children with parents coming along, and that for those who are going into 8th grade and above, there will be some limited teen programming. One of the biggest things is working through kind of how do we keep kids safe and how do we keep staff safe when our staff are supervising children. And so we're looking creatively at, how do we offer some child-friendly preschool programming, that lower elementary, upper elementary programming that really engages those students, but also allows their parents to be present with us and allows for perhaps some more family-focused activities. I'm scrolling down the list, sorry.
Jess, can you repeat what you just said?
In terms of the staff supervision of children?
Or the last couple sentences, not the whole thing.
We will, due to like the high risk of us supervising children who are going into 7th grade and below, camp will not be offering staff supervision of children without parents. Instead, we're looking creatively at how do we do some great family programming that allows for everyone to be involved, but also, how do we do creatively some of those meaningful components for those younger ages with their parents present that allow for social distancing. Chip, do you want to talk a little bit about the Dean's program? You're muted, Chip.
I am. Thank you. We are still planning on having a Dean's program, and we are, sorry, I'm going to pin my video up here. And so yeah, we are still planning on having a Dean's program. Some weeks we'll have, we're only going to have one Dean per week. Financially, the model doesn't work to have 2 deans or even a music person because of we need those lodging spaces for guests, as well as we don't have the finances to pay for the dean or lecturer's travel to camp anymore. So some weeks we'll have, I'll be one, some weeks it'll be one of the deans that was already scheduled to be there, and in other weeks it'll be someone different. And so I'm still working that. I hope to have that finalized by early next week to be able to promote and update everyone on that. We're looking to have a 1-hour Dean's program. So one presenter, 1 hour outside at the chapel on the beach. And we're looking at some different creative ways to do some shade out there. It's not that sunny out there in the morning, but there is some there. We're also looking at, like, let's say it's super windy. We're looking at actually going to the new archery range. The archery range has our new septic field for our kitchen septic on it, and so it's a nice It's a nice big area there, and we're looking to use that as a possible place. There won't be archery at the same time, just to be clarified. That would be an extra amount of prayer involved for archery range and the Dean's program. It is going to be so it's 1 hour. Kids are welcome to come. We are at this point, we are planning on doing a teen program that is for kids going to 8th grade and above. That will not probably be at the same time as the Dean's program. It'll more likely be in the evening. At least that's what we're thinking right now. And so the question comes up, like, what do we do with our kids during the Dean's program? It's a great question. And so I think that you're going to have to work with your spouse, or if you're with a group of families there or a family, trying to trade off on that. But as Jess had just said, we don't have any supervision of kids at that point. And I know that that's disappointing, and that's not what we want, but that's the decision we've made going forward as far as to the risk that we want to put our staff involved with there, as well as our sense of the inability to be able to keep younger kids socially distanced. And so, and yes, as my Taylor just pointed out, teens will be happy to sleep in the morning and maybe watch their brother and sister while mom and dad go to the Dean's program. But and at the Dean's program, out of the chapel or in the archery range, we will be socially separated, socially distanced at that event and everything. Let's see here. Is that all for the Dean here? I think so.
I think that's all for the Dean.
Okay.
We had another question about, will camp have recommendations for family activities such as nature hikes, crafts, or other options? And the answer is yes. We are definitely we'll have resources available for you about what are things you could do in the area that are outside, that are active, that would allow you to engage with your family. But we'll also be offering those family programming on site. Think of things where a whole family can come together, participate in an activity, and be socially distanced from other families. So kind of that community aspect of being together, but still being able to maintain that separation.
Chip, this is Weldon Schwaber.
We do have a question that, and I think it's come up a couple times in the chat. What happens when when it rains, right? If we're not using our indoor spaces, what are we going to do when it's raining? And so
first of all, it's not going to rain, folks. Okay,
exactly.
So I don't know why you keep talking.
How often does it actually rain at Camp Arcadia, anyways?
Come on, it doesn't really rain. You got a bunch of naysayers. No, sorry, Jess, go ahead. Answer the question.
We're looking creatively. Know that we have lots of great practice of using creative outdoor spaces when it's raining, thanks to Alpha Teen Week last year. But it's actually quite incredible of being able to transform, the wigwam porch, the in-front porch, into places where we can run programming even though it is raining. What are also some of the ways that we can maybe embrace the fact that it's precipitating outside, and do some family programming that allows for us to be outside and enjoying the rain? We're also exploring, what does it look like for us to put up a tent over a portion of the grassy knoll for this season, that would allow some shaded place for people to not only eat meals outside, to maybe play cards outside, do a board game that you bring yourself, but would also give us kind of that space that still allows for that outdoor atmosphere, the kind of the dissipating of germs that we get concerned about in our indoor spaces, but I'll be able to run some programming on a raining day.
And here's a shameless plug. If anyone's got a large tent, like an event tent that's pretty large, or know someone that has one or wants to donate one to camp, please be in touch with us. So
yeah.
Sorry.
We're looking.
Yes.
In terms of, will there be some, people have asked about, will there be a day at a camp? And if you look at we're working on modeling some of this schedule off of what we have typically done for our 6-day family weeks, for families 8 and 9. And there typically isn't a day at a camp. There'll be lots of opportunities for you to kind of decide what your family programming looks like each day, based upon the program schedule, based upon the weather, what you're in the mood for. And so we'll be supplying some of those, what can we do out of camp activities for you over the whole course of the week. And then it's kind of up to you to build each of your own daily schedules.
And Chris Stetler asked about will we have a camp organized Riverside canoe trip? We haven't made a decision on that yet, and so I know that's one of the things that's on our list to communicate with Riverside and that kind of stuff. But I do know that kind of things, as well as cycling and mountain biking, and even some other things that maybe some of us haven't done in the past up here, like there's whitewater rafting in the Manistee National Forest, and so there are other opportunities that maybe we're not organizing, but we're directing you to, that you can experience in the area. And I think we are looking at, because of the smaller size of one, emphasizing kind of the cycling, road cycling, and that kind of stuff, where I hope to lead some of that. But even with the kayaks, and if people brought their own snorkeling gear and such, we are still planning on using our boats and stand-up paddle boards. We are looking, though, and we're still researching this, but and I know Just would mention this if I didn't, but there'll be an email that's going to go out to each family week, like 2 weeks prior to. It's going to give an update on kind of where we're at, what you can do. And for instance, like bringing your own life jackets is one that I know is going to be on there. And so I'm not saying that we can't use some of ours, but there's kind of guidelines right now that are out about having those have to rest for 72 hours, or they're staying with one person for the week. So if you can bring your own life jacket for the week, that's going to help everyone else out. So.
For sure. Thanks, Chip. We've been getting a lot of questions about the trading post. And so as of right now, the trading post will be open for like takeout service. So we're looking at, how do we creatively foster a space where you can come up and order, and then you'll be able to kind of like take your ice cream to go, and be able to enjoy it on the wigwam porch, on the patio. And we'll have hours where that is available for you. In terms of merchandise, we are doing a pre-order this year. So this will be something where you'll get to view the merchandise online. You'll place your pre-order. We'll have limited stock kind of carry over here on site that you'll be able to purchase at the office window, or purchase, when the trading post is open, but we'll not be kind of welcoming people back into the trading post to look at a merchandise setup for this year. Sorry, someone is walking by my house. My dog is not very happy about that. Chip, anything else about the trading post?
Nope. I would just reiterate on just the wigwam. Someone asked, is the wigwam going to be open? The roundup also is not going to be open, and so, the questions have been asked, well, are you on a rainy day, can families reserve the roundup? And we are definitely looking into that. Right now, that's not part of our plans, but we are looking to take some of the things that are in the roundup, like the ping pong tables, on certain days, bring them outside, and so trying to get as much of that stuff outside. And we might look at a reservation type of a process, but that's still to be decided as we move forward.
For sure. There were some questions about trading post merch. Brianna put in a question about, will you be able to purchase merchandise even if you don't attend Camp Arcadia this year? And the answer is yes. The pre-order will be available and open to kind of everyone. We'll be sending it out, I imagine, via our e-news. It'll also be out on our social media. There'll be a certain date that you place your pre-order. If you are coming to camp, we will have your merchandise here for when you arrive. And if you're not coming to camp, then you'll have the opportunity to kind of opt in and cover your shipping costs for us to get those products to you.
And just to make sure folks understand on the pre-order, the pre-order allows us to not have any excess inventory, and so that's one of the things is we didn't want to. We normally spend over $20,000 in trading post merchandise and sell most of it, but we might carry over $5,000 to $6,000 to $8,000 in inventory. And with the financial constraints this year, it seemed to be a better financial move for us to be frugal to work on the pre-order. We still have inventory from last year, which will be available, and we'll figure out a way to get that up online, or at least have it available for folks that are here. They can kind of pick through that in some way that's safe. The other questions that popped up on here regarding program stuff, His question was, will deans do family themed lectures? I did consider that, honestly, but it gets pretty difficult. Like, how do you do a dean's program that's going to be great for 8-year-old and an 80-year-old? And I decided to stick with our basically the same kind of themes that we've been doing in the past. I think kids are welcome to attend. I don't know any theme that's going to be inappropriate. I don't think they've ever been inappropriate. And some I think are going to fit more with families than other ones. But I said not to ask the deans that kind of redo their lecture plans at this point. A question came up from Claire Peoples, and she says, how will kids be able to socially distance? It is hard to keep kids apart, play structures, etc. That's a great question, and that's why we decided not to organize our own staff supervised activities for younger children, because we didn't feel we'd be able to do that. So basically, we're saying, like, if you're really concerned about that, this might not be the summer to come to camp. Because you're going to be on an environment where there are going to be people around, right? I mean, this is going to be more active than your backyard is, right? And so I think it's something that it's up to the parents' responsibility to be watching their kids and kind of enforcing what social distance is for their family. You might decide within your own family group, you've got cousins and everything, you might decide to stay and to be in that group closer than you would with others. But really, we're kind of putting that back on the families to be able to adhere to that. We're going to step in when it's in violation of our staff space, and and we'll of course be encouraging it throughout the week, and there'll be signs everywhere for that. So Jess, anything to add to that? Okay. Will there be a talent show? That's one of the things that we still have to work out. I mean, Lord knows, just between Jess and I, there's tons of talent. You throw in Rachel and Franco and Taryn, my goodness, how could there not be some sort of talent show? Okay, question comes up, what about fall staff? So we talk a little bit about staff here. With fall staff, we haven't made our plans on our fall season yet. So we're targeting August 1st for our decision to look at our fall retreat. So we'll know more about that then. But we are, I think, anticipating doing something this fall and needing some, and of course needing some fall staff. We definitely have concerns about an older population who often serves on our fall staff. I don't think we're saying that we're not going to hire older adults on that, but it's one of the things that we're considering as far as to what's the safest way to go about that. Our summer staff, we have roughly 42 that we had hired for the summer, and we're working this week. We've asked them to reapply if they're interested in this family retreat light model, and the staffing is going to look like where they're going to be rotating amongst the different departments. Like, everyone's probably going to spend time in the kitchen. They're going to be spending time doing housekeeping, some program things. They're going to be rotating around, which isn't what everyone maybe signed up for at the beginning. We've had maybe a little less than half who have or around half who have been interested in this family retreat light, and we look to be hiring probably around 10 or so for the summer. So from 42 to a 10, and we are hoping to make those decisions in the next few days about the staff. All right. All right, we're going to move on to meals right now. I'm going to turn over to Taryn.
Thanks, Chip. So I'm going to kind of go through some of the bigger questions that were on meal service for the summer, and kind of what the experience is going to look like, since obviously it's going to be a lot different than the normal camp experience. And so what's going to happen is basically we will be serving dinner on Saturday night and go through Friday morning breakfast. And we will be having breakfast and dinner in shifts. That way we can keep the table 6 feet apart in the dining room, and it allows us to sanitize and disinfect the dining room between each meal, just because obviously you have to take masks off in order to eat your food. And so we will be taking 50 people in the dining room in 2 different shifts for breakfast and dinner. And then lunch will be a takeout or picnic experience. So there will be no dine-in service. And that way we're able to really disinfect the area in between meals. And also it allows our staff to use or to go to the other departments that are needed throughout the day. And that way we're getting the meal prep done earlier, which makes it easier for the staff to kind of go and use those other spaces and use their talents where they're needed. And then also, like, during the breakfast and dinner meals, you are more than welcome to take your food outside of the dining room. We're not going to contain you in the dining room. You're allowed to go and eat in designated spaces around camp, and we'll leave bins around camp for you to dump your silverware and platters and all of that kind of stuff. But you are asked to maintain that 6-foot distance even outside of the dining room. The meals would be served family style, and you would have an assigned table for your breakfast and dinner, and you would use that same table throughout the entire week. The staff will be wearing masks and gloves, and then the guests are asked to wear masks when they're entering the dining room and obviously take them off when you are eating. And then when it kind of comes to the menu, we are going to do our best to keep it the same as we would for a normal camp experience. Obviously, with the takeout lunch option, we're going to try and do some hot sandwiches and maybe some other options that are easier for families to kind of take with them, but still maintaining that camp quality food and keeping the camp favorites for everybody. And then we were also looking and kind of exploring the opportunity to kind of have takeout meals for certain meals during the week for cottagers or other people in the community. And we have not made a final decision on that yet. There's still a lot to explore on if we're even able to do that. But we will keep you guys updated on the decision when it comes to that. Another question was with the coffee lobby in the lobby of the inn. And yes, we are planning on doing the 24-hour coffee service. However, it will look a little different. We're looking at getting a hot chocolate machine instead of using the powder. That way it's keeping things a lot more clean and cleanly, I guess. And we'll also be setting up some sanitizing and disinfecting materials in that space so that when you get your coffee, you're able to disinfect those things so that the next person is able to use it without fear of cross-contamination. And yeah, I think that was all of the main questions, unless other people have some more questions when it comes to meals.
What about it?
If you have questions, put them on the chat there. I want to thank Taryn. She's done a lot of work to figure out how to do this safely, as well as taking additional classes and all that kind of stuff, and working with our food service providers. So it is definitely a different environment for the food service. So thank you, Taryn. A few more questions here on some stuff we've already covered here, and then we'll get into registration. There's this question about, will archery equipment be available, or do you have to bring your own? We are still deciding about whether we're going to do archery, as well as whether we're going to be doing when it comes to other recreational stuff, like what do you have to bring and what are we going to provide. We're still working that out. All right. I am going to turn it over to Rachel to talk about lodging and registration process. So, Rachel?
Thanks, Chip. So I just want to kind of go a little bit, Chip talked to kind of a little bit about our new program and the switch. So what we've done is we've canceled all the existing retreats that are from Family Week 1 through Labor Day weekend. And we will be offering a Family Week Light program for those 9 family weeks and then Labor Day weekend. All these will be a 6-night retreat. And just to let everybody know, so everybody has been officially canceled from those retreats. And you will need to, if you would like to attend a Family Week Light, you will need to resubmit an application for a registration request for a retreat that you would like to attend. And that can be done online. There were a few glitches over the weekend. Friday we had the link or the option to register for that one. It was only live for 24 hours, so we got that fixed. And then people were still registered up until yesterday. So I think all of our glitches in the system have been fixed. So if you had some issues in the past, if you can log back in, you should be able to run through the process no problem. Some questions about that, like how is the response going, or we've had about 60 to 70 families apply so far to get in, and that's out of all those retreats. We had about 440 families that were registered for all those retreats. And so kind of people are asking, like, what's the demand? What are my chances of getting in? Great questions. We don't know. It's kind of, I think, early to tell. Like right now, it seems like, if there's only 70 to 100 families, probably, depending, hopefully they're all wanting to come different weeks, we can get all of those families in. There have been, kind of a mixed number of people that have said, thank you, but we are not going to move forward with the Family Week Light. And there have been also calls that have said, hey, we'd like to come. What are my chances? How do we do this? And that sort of thing. So if you have questions about applying, or you're having issues with online, feel free to give the office a call, and we can kind of walk you through that process and assist if needed. So let's see what other questions. How will we decide who gets in? That is a great question. We plan to give priority to guests that were already registered for that week. So we're going to look at those that were originally registered first for that week and try and get them in to the current week that they would, to the week they would like to get into if it's the same. We're also going to look at group size and accommodations. And then we hope to we will prioritize on-site guests above off-site guests or commuters that are wanting to come to camp. Another question about, our structure is that we are using our cottages and our in-rooms with private bathrooms, and then we are assigning families to a hallway bathroom. So all of the bathrooms in the inn will be private, essentially. None of them will be public bathrooms. And some families have said, hey, my family can share all one bathroom in the hallway. Are you okay with that? And we said, yes, we are, I think, but we have made a decision that we will not exceed 100 guests at camp during any individual retreat. And that will include offsite and onsite, or onsite and offsite guests. So if we kind of get 100 onsite guests, then we're not going to be able to have any offsite guests that week.
And that 100 does not take into consideration people from the cottage colony or town cottagers. So they would be in addition to that 100. Just be careful about that. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Cool. There was a question about, hey, what if is there a minimum number of people that we need to have to even have the retreat? I'll be honest, we've not talked about that. Obviously, if there's very little response and we only have a handful of families, then we would have to reconsider it. But hopefully that's not the case.
We hope that's not the case. I mean, we have done some financial modeling where, if we were only to allow to have a certain amount of guests, it wouldn't necessarily be financially feasible. So yes, but I feel like the phone calls that we're getting, that there are people that still want to come to Camp Arcadia. So.
All right. Another question on registrations was like, what about the people that, so this year, if you didn't get into the drawing, you were given a golden ticket, right? Which is people who didn't get in through the original one, right? And those people then have they're at the front of the line next year, right? So what if I got in this year, but now I go through it again and I don't get in? I'm behind those people for next year? That seems weird. There's about 7 families that got golden tickets. So that's not a very long line. That'd be the first answer. So there's not that many people with golden tickets. But the question still comes up is, what about those who don't get in through this second round? All right, maybe there's more demand than we had hoped for, and even if they're flexible on what week, it still doesn't work out. Will they get any sort of preferential treatment for next year's drawing. We haven't decided upon that yet. Will there be some incentive that we would put out for people to take a break this year because we have over demand, and then but give them like preferential treatment for next year? Once again, we haven't made any decisions on that. So, but those are good ideas and ones we will take to heart. It obviously it's understandable. I think that if we have people that we're asking people to if they don't get into camp or they choose not to come, to donate their deposit or a part of it to camp if they're financially able to do so. Understandably, that it's going to really stink for folks who want to come and maybe we don't have enough space and they can't come to the family retreat light program. That is going to stink. That is one of the downsides of having a reduced number of people at camp, and one that we wish wasn't the case. But it was between that or not having camp at all, so we would avoid that. So we're hoping people will understand that these are special circumstances. So, but I know it would be difficult for anyone who wanted to come who didn't have the ability to come. Let's see
Can I
here.
say something?
Yep, go for it.
And know too that all of our families who were registered for Family Weeks 1 through 9 and for Labor Day weekend whose retreats were canceled, they'll be receiving like a camp kit in the mail. And so this is something, if they decide to come to the Family Retreat Light, it'll be available in your room when you arrive, kind of like any merchandise if you pre-order. But for those whose retreats were canceled, we'll be sending you kind of a taste of Camp Arcadia. Think some of the best cookie recipes, crunchy recipes, some nature activities, some ribbons to do your own tournament at home. And so we'll be sending those to you so you kind of have the opportunity to have a bit of Camp Arcadia in your place and space, whether you choose not to register for the Family Retreat Light or if you don't get into that programming. We want to be able to connect you to the camp experience, even if you're not able to gather with us on site this summer.
Thank you, Jess. Other questions that came up on here about registration is Jess posted the link to the information on Family Retreat Light on our website. We might be adding some information to that, but the most up-to-date information you're going to get is 2 weeks prior to when you would be coming to camp. There was a question, I'll direct back to Rachel. When are people going to find out if they get in? June 5th is a priority date to submit your registration, but when are they going to find out if they get in?
That's a great question. I don't have it in front of me. I believe the first date is June 13th for Family Weeks 1 and 2. And then the next week is Family Weeks 3 through 5. And then the next week will be Family Weeks 6 through 9 and Labor Day. So we've kind of staggered it. We're going to focus on filling those first 2 retreats, and then the next 3, and then the last ones. Everybody will find out by the end of June. But that first date, I believe, is June 13th.
And all those dates are listed on our website under that Family Retreat Light information tab that I shared.
And there haven't been any questions on this, but in case there is, the way we are charging people, like the rates are different than they're per person. And what we did is we kind of took an average of what it would have cost to come under our Family Retreat 8 and 9 model for this year, and figured out a cost per space, and then kind of a number of people that are included with that price. So if, like, I think Spruce Cottage is 4 people and it's an X amount of dollars. Any people above that is going to be anyone above that is going to be $150 in addition to that. All right, just answered on here, but our max at camp is around 100 people for meals and activities, not including the cottage colony. Let's see here. There was a question about staffing. And so Steph asked, she goes, 10 staff does not seem like enough. staff to keep up with all that will be done to sanitize off camp, run programs, and feed people. So believe me, that thought has crossed our mind. I'll be honest, when we started this model, we only had 4 into this model. So it really is, it's increased a bit there. We've looked at, I think, some of the things that we are normally doing at camp, we're not going to be doing. And that includes some of the cleaning, since the only public restrooms will be in the assembly. And that'll be cleaned at least 3 times a day, but your individual bathrooms that you are having are not going to be cleaned throughout the week. That's one of the things that the CDC and the hotel industry has been pretty direct on, is not doing room service or that during the week. And so we'll have cleaning supplies for families and such, but so that'll take a load off the housekeeping, as well as there's less laundry. We will be laundering everything in the room, but with not using all the rooms in the end, there'll be less laundry. There will be definitely, as you point out, sanitizing throughout camp. That will be in addition to that. But there's going to be a lot less programming, so there's a lot less need to have as many staff leading all the programmings. Jess, anything you'd want to add to that?
No, I think you said it well, Chip.
So, all right. Let's see here. Any other questions, Jess, you can see here that we should address before we move on to the next category?
I don't think so. Some of the more detailed questions I sent personal messages to answer.
Oh, so nice of you. All right, so let's move on here to, and of course, if we answered your question and you still have questions and we don't get to it, please contact us. We will love to talk with you. So let's talk about cottagers. So not camp cottagers, but people who are in the cottage colony or town cottagers, all right? And so looking at that, we are, so there will be, camp will be open for the cottage colony and town cottager usage. There are going to be some guidelines and some restrictions to that, though. One is we have to know who's at camp, and so we're going to need them to register as well, like when they're up for the week, as well as do a health screen, just like our normal guests would do before they arrive, as well as sign a waiver. We are going to, you know, there's going to be a limit to the number of people that we can have at camp. And we don't know what that is for all the different activities because we haven't figured out what exactly we're going to be doing. We know the chapel and the beach fits about 300 people. And, you know, and so we're trying to figure out what is that number that we could have people out there and still socially distance from the other families out there, which is going to be one of our requirements. So, and then there might be other activities that we have to restrict at camp. And so we're looking at the possibility of cottagers having to pre-register for certain events that might be more sensitive to the amount of people. There are, you know, and so it's going to be a bit messy. We are trying to figure out a best way to do that so that we're not turning people away at events. We kind of know who's going to be there, and it's kind of a sticky wicket because we don't often know who are guests at camp if they're going to come to the events either. So there might be something for them to pre-register too. So we're trying to figure that out. We ask your patience with us. One of the things is children under 7th grade and the younger need to be supervised while they're at camp. So cottagers who have kids who generally would come down, and I would include my kids in this group who just kind of roam around camp, that's not going to be an option this year. There will be for everyone access to like our patio and the sitting areas and all that kind of stuff. That's for our guests as well as for cottagers. We do ask that cottagers not go inside the inn because that's the one area where we have guests staying in there. But we do ask that if they do need to use a restroom, the assembly bathrooms will be the public restrooms that can be used. As we mentioned earlier, there might be the opportunity for takeout meals for the cottage colony as well as people from town. And let's see here. the camp beach is pretty small, and especially with the lake levels being up so high. So we are restricting use to our beach. And so cottagers won't have the ability to use our beach except for, so there's that time when our guests are leaving. So basically Friday morning through Saturday afternoon will be a time where there won't be any guests at camp and the cottagers would be able to use our beach. We're asking all our guests to still socially distance when at the beach. And we are still trying to figure out how to get our boats near the beach area so people can use them. And we'll be, like I said, mentioned about bringing your own life jackets, and we'll be sanitizing paddles and things like that so that that we can use that safely. Let's see here. Any other questions that came up on the chat regarding cottager use? All right. I mentioned earlier about our fall retreats. Just to reiterate, we haven't made any decisions on that, and so all the stuff we're talking about the family retreat light doesn't necessarily apply to our fall retreats. So I wouldn't make that leap like, oh, we're only going to use private bathrooms for the fall retreats. That's a little too far out for us to really make a decision on as things are changing. But we do hope to make a decision by the beginning of August on that. Let's see here, some questions about our beach area and our facilities and grounds. So what's the status of our pocket beach? We still do have a pocket beach, which is nice. And so it is still accessible. Our lakefront did, for the most part, fare well during this past winter. We are still doing some work on it. We're putting some additional rock in the area right in front of the inn, kind of behind the big rocks, kind of fill in there, because there's erosion with waves topping over those big rocks. So we've been working on that. The one area there is concern, that's the area in the very southern part of camp property. As you go to the public beach, that southern area is eroding just south of where our rocks are at, and we're working with our coastal engineers as well as our excavating company on a more cost-effective option of putting some rock down there to stop that. And because our concern is on that south end that it would start to eat away and then get to the chapel on the beach. It's pretty far from that right now, but with the lake cresting this summer at an all-time high, that's one thing that we are looking at, and we'll be doing something on that in the next few weeks here. Let's see here. The dewatering system is working, and it is keeping everything safe and dry. There are a lot of pipes around camp, especially behind the building. Some of that will be hidden by grass as it grows up. Some of the pipes, like in front of the wigwam, are visible. And I was sitting out there yesterday with Jess as we were talking, and it sounds like there's a fountain going around because it's like water being slurped through these tubes. So it's kind of peaceful, actually. Is it loud? There is the pump behind the inn. It does make noise. It's not too loud. I think we're looking to ways to kind of to get it softer, but I don't think it's prohibitive for people who are staying at a camp, especially as more people show up. Let's see here. Some other questions that came up here are off-site trails, restaurant, shops in the area open. Northern Michigan is in a region that they opened up this past week for partially opening. So trails and stuff are opened, and restaurants and bars are able to do 50%. Not all of them are choosing to open for that, but shops and everything are opening up, and everyone's kind of taking it slowly and figuring out what that means to them. But things are opening up here. So let's see here. Going through these other questions. What if you change your mind after registering? Rachel, how would you answer that one?
I think that and I have to remember, we haven't talked about it in a while, Chip. But I think we talked about a 2-week cancellation. And obviously, if you have been exposed or are sick, we would cancel that registration with a full refund. But we talked about a 2-week cancellation kind of deadline to kind of cancel by. So if you do decide to change your mind, or if things change, I think this year we are willing to kind of be flexible with that, considering the circumstances.
It was Rachel. It was always asked, will you be considered first for your original week and then for other weeks?
So in the form that you fill out, it asks if you were registered, and then for what week, and then it asks what retreat you would like to apply for the Family Week Light. It gives you 2 options, and then it asks if you're willing to be considered for any of the retreats. And so we are giving priority to those to the retreat that you were originally scheduled for. So if you're looking to come to a different week, you wouldn't necessarily have priority for that week, but yes, you can be considered. And if you kind of check that box, if you're willing to come to any, that would probably be a phone call from us if we get to that point, like, hey, we have this available. Are you interested? Can you make that work?
Rachel, another question was, is there any preference for LCA members?
No, we're using the retreat that you were originally registered for,
right,
as a priority,
and
and getting your registration in by that priority date.
So, and just to be clear, about 80% of those are LCA members, if not more than that. So
Correct.
Most of those people who are registered are LCA members. So,
correct.
Question was asked again, just to reiterate, will there be housekeeping service in the private bathrooms, or should we plan to clean those ourselves as needed throughout the week? There will not be housekeeping service throughout the week. So yes, you should be planning to clean those, and we can give you supplies for that. So
we will have supplies in the bathrooms. We have talked about that, essentially like a little cleaning caddy for each bathroom in the building.
Can we jump down to some other questions? Like, one of the questions is, will campers be allowed to go to Trinity on Sunday morning?
Great question. The answer is no, which is a tough one, but I'm an elder at the church. I've been working with the church council and the elders and the pastor on that as much as they would like us to. We have decided to work with them and say, like, any of the guests who are registered at camp. Now, this is not including the cottage colony or the town cottagers, but the people who are registered at camp, we will ask them not to worship at Trinity. Right now, Trinity is actually worshiping at Camps Chapel on the beach, and that's probably that might be where they're worshiping this summer as well. We'll have our own service for you. Not sure when that's going to be on Sunday, but we'll have our own service, but it will not be. They don't want to have kind of the influx of new people every week at their church, especially if they're inside, and if they're outside, there won't be enough room to add us to one of their already scheduled services. So, but we'll be giving more information about that in our registration, the pre-email.
Rachel, there was another question about will guests be notified in advance whether their registration or reservation, is for like an inn or a cottage? Like, how will they learn about what type of lodging they have?
They will learn in their confirmation email that they get. So those dates that we told you about, that is when you will find out what type of lodging you will get.
And I would encourage.
That's another question on the form. So you're asked what areas of camp you are willing to stay in. So we are not going to put you in an area that you don't check a box for.
And as much information as you can give us, if you're like, oh, these two families are fine with sharing a cottage or a private bathroom, like if you can't figure out how to put it on the form, send us an email. But as much information as we have as to where you're flexible and where you're not will help us. Doesn't mean we can always accommodate it, but it does help us know. The question is asked here is, will towel exchange be daily? And we haven't figured that out exactly. What our tentative plans are is it would give you like more towels than you normally have at camp, so we're not exchanging towels, but there will be some opportunity for you to have a fresh towel through the week, and so we're trying to figure that out to do that safely. So But there will not be a system where you're bringing your towels all down to the linen counter. I can guarantee you that won't be the solution to it. But, so stay tuned on that. Sharon asked, how many people typically are at camp each week, trying to figure out how reduced it will feel. Normally, there's anywhere from like 150 to 180 people who are registered at camp for the week, in addition to the cottagers who will be using camp. And we're looking at probably 75 to 100 registered guests, and then additional cottagers. So you're looking at probably roughly half, at least from the registered side of what that's gonna look like. I can tell you from our Family Weeks 9, which generally is just what the size it is, it does not feel like there's no one at camp. It's a very nice feel, and there's obviously a little bit more room to breathe around camp because there's less people there, but it doesn't feel underused, or like it, there's still a good vibe, I would say. You do not need to bring your own linens or sleeping bags. We're going to provide that. We are going to launder all that stuff each week. So like those of you on the inside here know that generally in the past we would always wash all the linens and everything, but the blankets and the bedspreads would be laundered every few weeks, or when they were dirty. But all the blankets, all the bedspreads. So when you come to camp, you will have all freshly laundered stuff on your bed. Anything that a guest would touch is going to be freshly laundered. So let's see here. Someone asked, if you originally had week 4 to 5 and you don't find out if you got it till later, it would be too late to ask for an earlier week. That is definitely true. We're going to try as fast as we can to figure this out, but this is a lot to figure out in a very short amount of time. We want to make sure we get those guests who are those first 2 weeks figured out, since that's so near term. But yes, we understand that that if you're a later week, you want possibly an earlier week, that's going to be difficult. But if we don't have enough demand for week 1 and 2, we'd be looking out to other weeks too, the people who had those as a possibility. So, all right. Let's see here. Yes.
I think we answered most of them, or like they've been answered in messages back to people in terms of private bathrooms and stuff, some of those other questions. But I think, there's 2 questions we haven't quite touched on, which is, how does the town feel about camp opening? And then kind of the second question, which comes from Donna, is, is there any chance of state restrictions being lifted in July?
I cannot speak for the town. So I've been in contact with Janice, the township supervisor, as well as I talked with Shannon Westgate, who runs the Pleasant Valley Motel. She's planning on opening. I've been in contact with Watervale, the people who run Watervale, which is just north of Arcadia. They are planning on opening. Crystal Mountain is planning on opening. Chimney Corners Resort north of Frankfurt is planning on opening. Little Eden, a family camp in Onekama, is planning on opening. So I'm sure there are people who would rather not have the influx of people into the town of Arcadia, but we're not doing anything different than what other people are planning to do in the area. Also, and I've talked to a few people about this, there's not like there's not a downtown Arcadia where everyone's going to be out socializing at. The Big Apple is not going to open, and there's basically takeout service at the Ice House ice cream shop. So there's not a place where you really could go infect the entire town if you had a coronavirus, And so, I think the areas of concern probably are going to be the beach area, and there's not a lot of beach anywhere because of the high waters, but there's probably some concern about that. But I think we aren't the only people who bring people to Arcadia in the summer. The rest of the town blooms with all the people visiting and coming to their second home. So I know it's a sensitive topic, but I from indications from this past weekend, people are still gonna come. So will restrictions I mean, one question is Michigan stay-at-home order is till June 12th. You know, what if that goes further on into the summer? We'll have to cross our bridge when we come to it. I'm not prepared to say we won't or will have camp under those circumstances. It depends if there's any exceptions for hotels or resorts. And you know, what if restrictions ease throughout the summer? Would that affect our programming, what we can offer? It very well might. So, but we don't really know if they're going to change. So, some other questions here. We hope to have some evening programs, some evening worship opportunities, as well as activities for families or possibly entertainment. So we are still looking at all those options and trying to work through that. Let's see here. All right. You know, as just to give you kind of a looking at the, you know, how does this affect camp's financial picture in general? You know, does having this family retreat light, does this solve all of your financial problems? Or, you know, what does this mean for camp? Well, you know, the motivation to do family retreat light was to fulfill camp's mission in the best way that we possibly could with under these restrictions. So that's what was driving it. It had to be financially sound for us to go ahead with it, to not put camp in a worse financial situation, which could limit our ability to do our ministry in the future. So it is a good plan for us. It doesn't bridge that entire gap there. So basically, there are three things that affect camp's financial, well, four things really that affect camp's financial situation. On the revenue side, it's our attendance at this family retreat light programming, and the amount of deposits that become donations. That's another one. And then how much we have in unrestricted donations. Under our current projections, that are conservative projections on each of those three, we still end up having to borrow about $100,000 to make it through the year. And there will be some borrowing just on a cash flow situation regardless, but we're looking at possibly a net of extending our line of credit $100,000 under a conservative estimate under this financial model. The fourth element is just our controlling our expenses as much as we possibly can. So we're obviously doing all the things that we can that we don't have to spend money on, and like things like, you know, we're going to have some flowers at camp this year, but we're not going to have as many as we normally do because we can't afford it. And things like not paying for the dean's travel, having only one dean at camp, all are based on financial decisions. Our full-time staff, Tyler, who was hired for our operations director, he won't be employed with camp past June 11th. He knows this. It's not a surprise to him, and it's very, very sad. But his family, he had not relocated up here yet, and he was going to do it beginning of May. Obviously, the pandemic made that prohibitive, and with camp's financial future looking, you know, a little bit more uncertain, we decided to basically cut that position for the near future. So we wish that we could keep him on, but so we will be letting him go after June 11th, which is the end of our pay loan protection program that we were blessed to be able to receive this year. So all right. Jess, any other questions you think that came up that you think we should address?
I don't think so. Know that, you know, as we continue to roll things out, we will continue to communicate with you. That 2-week pre-email will be huge in terms of information and what's available. And then if you have other questions that weren't answered, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Cool. Thank you, Jess. I just want to thank everyone for joining in tonight and for all of your support. As I said at the very beginning, it's been overwhelming and quite encouraging to have all the Camp Arcadia family kind of come together. The fundraising has been going well, and all the notes and prayers and support is so appreciated. And we're gonna we're going to need them as we move forward. You know, there's still a lot of things to be worked out, and so we need a lot of your prayers and support as we go forward. And I'm going to ask Jess to close us with a prayer,
Thanks, Chip. The Lord be with you.
and also with you.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this day, for the ways that we've experienced your love, for the opportunities we've had to be in community, and for the moments where your grace has been poured upon us. God, we give you thanks for this family, the family that can gather together virtually in community, for the family that is of Camp Arcadia that's excited about new options, while mourning at the same time the loss of what we've always known in that space and place. God, I ask that you would be with us this evening, be with all who are on this call, be with all who are connected to the camp family, that they may know your presence, that they may know your grace, and they may know your love. Keep us safe this night and wake us anew in you tomorrow. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, everybody. Take care. God bless.